Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I'm Spencer. This is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but I've been off heroin since April 9, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the dumb stuff I did to get put in prison, the crazy stuff that happened while I was in prison. God forbid you end up in prison, you won't have to make some of the same mistakes I made. So today's story. Latin Kings and DMI, Dead Man Incorporated. Dead Man Incorporated is a gang that's out of Maryland. That's where it originated, and there ended up being a very serious guy from DMI that was one part of the original bunch, Sternak, okay? This dude was serious and about it. In Petersburg, see, they don't have SNY or PC. I'd never even heard of that until after I got out and started watching this stuff. I guess I'd heard about it in a movie or something like that, but didn't know. I figured that was just you just stayed in the hole. I didn't know they had whole prisons for that. But in the feds, they mix and match. You watch Convict Inc. The dude who does that talks about he was in the same prison as Carmine Persco, the mob boss. But there's also a lot of chomos there. They mix and match people in. So, although 40% of Petersburg was chomos because they had a program there for them, a lot of other people were locals. D.C., Maryland, Virginia, DMV area, North South Carolina, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Tennessee are basically in the area. So, half the prison was just normal people that ended up there for that. Now, my early 20s, I was a little bit naive. I didn't know much about the prison system. So when I met people that were supposed gang members, any type of gang that you can think of, and I heard they were from the West Coast, I'm like, well, how'd you end up all the way out here at Petersburg? They're like, oh, they like to split us up. You know, they don't want us all in one spot. We go too hard. Well, I heard that same thing from so many people. Well, if their gang's the one that goes too hard, how can they all be the ones that go too hard and they split up? That's BS. What happened is those people that were out from the West Coast, California, wherever, they got beat up. They got beat up and they got sent to Petersburg, where it's so far away, the likelihood of whatever issue they had is not going to get told. So that was something interesting, but Sternak definitely not. Sternak, the guy from DMI that enforced from it, he definitely didn't have any of that. Some people ended up there just out of coincidence and circumstance. See, he spent his time at a serious medium, got his points went down, hadn't gotten in trouble in a couple of years, and got sent to Petersburg Low to do the RDAP drug program. He was in there for 1 week, and somebody of his weight, that throws their weight around, like they command his presence, sometimes people tell on him to get him out of there. And I suspect that's what happened with him, because he hadn't been there for a week. He just bought wine, put it in his room for later. They went right to it, got it, put him in the shoe. Then they put him at the medium. So that's how he ended up Petersburg medium. As did I. I started at the low, got in trouble, spent 3 months in the hole, and I ended up at the medium. So there are a lot of serious and mix and match people that end up there, but DMI had a presence, man. I'm telling you, that was one group. They had a few guys. The guy Steve that was pretty much the brains behind it. That dude was a genius. He had more money making stuff than I can tell you. He made more money off of drugs than the actual drug dealers by loan shark. Anytime dope hit, he'd loan it to people. And you borrow 10 from him, you owe him 12 back next week. Within 7 days you haven't paid, you owe him 2 more. So if you borrow $100 from him, you owe him 120 next week. He expects you not to pay that. He expects you to take 2 weeks. So that's going to be 140. You don't pay it by week 3, it's going to be an issue. By week 4, Sternak's going to be the one coming after you. So that's why I mentioned that. With him there, they were able to do a whole lot more operational stuff because they knew Sternak was going to come get that. So at the medium, we did not have weights. We had dirt. So we sewed up khaki sheets, stuff like that, and just an idea of his strength. He was about 6'1", 215, and he had a belly to him. he had a belly, but this boy could do burpees, man. He could do burpees like no other, and he could lift that dirt. He was strong. It was like 330 pounds, I think the bag was, and he was pressing it for a few reps for about 3. So he's benching in the 300s. Strong dude. Talked like he'd smoked cigarettes for his whole entire life. I had a raspy voice. No, we don't do that. That's how he talked. Okay, and he was a character. He was my cellmate for a little bit. Got some stories about that too. I had him, me, and the former shot caller for the Serenos from Lone Pot Medium in California, all in a cell in RDAP. That provided some stories. They had a couple clashes at incidents, in the set. But anyway, some funny stuff. So here's what the layout is. It's an open pod, but you got a couple TV rooms. Just 2 TV rooms. Now, the one TV room is a white TV room. There are 7 TVs in total. I believe there are 7. I know inside at the low security it's 7, but it's the medium. It's an open pod. There's 2 TV rooms with the door. The cameras everywhere. You know how Walmart has those cameras with poles that come down with that little black ball that they can see everything? That's the same type of cameras they have in the pods at the medium. They have these poles that come down to about 20 foot above you with that camera, and there's all over the place. And those poles come down with the camera. That's pretty much all the cameras are. They don't have cameras inside the TV room. So basically there's a big window on the TV room, but it only can see diagonally. So people go and they'd fight in there because it'd be private. Also, the cameras can't see inside the cells. I mean, they can only see the window, so if there's a sign up, they can't see, you know. But anyway, that's the layout. Now, as opposed to the other units, they had spray painted on each TV, below each TV, what that TV was supposed to be for. See, RDAT was a program. It was basically meant to change criminal behavior. I think it's stupid. I mean, it helped some people. I didn't have respect issues for authority. Whenever I got in trouble, I had authority stick up for me. They'd be like, no, not that kid. He's the most respectful, good student I've ever met. You've got the wrong one. Okay? I'm an addict. Okay? I also was like wanted to be a little criminal mastermind. I watched too many movies and thought I was going to be, DMX and Belly or something like that, or George Jung. I watched too much stuff and I thought I was going to be the next one of them. Lost my 20s to it, so look how that worked out. But never had respect issues, stuff like that. They had dumb rules, like in between the unit and rec yard. If you're on the walkway, basically you're supposed to tell on 3 people a month. Not stuff that's going to get their phone, computer taken away or more time. They tell you that privately in the room. See, there are 4 inmates that run the program. They say the inmates run it. We don't. One's white, one's black, one's Spanish, and the 4th can either be like a Puerto Rican or a Native American. That's how they keep racial balances. Those 4 are people who have already done the program, and they get paid monthly, like $150 a month to mediate. See, these I'll get into that later on another one, but they do these things. You're not telling, you're holding people accountable. So basically they try to do that. I was quiet as a church mouse through that program, because if you got in trouble, they made you sit in these timeout chairs. Like, they give you 2 booths. Now, what a booth is you'd have to sit in a chair with an empty chair in front of you. The program was from like 8:45 to like 10:30. That's when they did all the stuff. But the punishments, if you received any, you had to do later on. So while everybody's watching TV, you have to sit in a chair for an hour in timeout with a notebook. Anybody that decides to come by and ask you, what'd you do, and ask you a question, they tell you something, you got to write it down. They have to sign it. Like, different inmates have different jobs, and some inmates become super programmers and telling on everybody. I sat in that timeout chair twice. I despised that. It was so demeaning. It made me so mad that I just stayed quiet, and I just got through that as easy as I could. But anyway, so moving on. He got there, and he went in, and he told the people, listen, y'all like telling stuff, y'all do that to each other, you ain't going to do it on me. They held him accountable the first day, and pretty much he was about it, but the people in there were terrible. And it was funny. I have another story. I think it's called One Tough White Guy about him, where I'd help him write his papers, and it was funny because I can write something, a masterpiece that I know they're going. I've been to rehabs and programs before, so I know how to write a paper, and I can write it in 5 minutes, and it'll look like you spent an hour on it. And that's a funny story, so check that one out. So anyway, these TVs underneath each one, it's spray painted on what each TV is supposed to be for. They got one TV that says BET sprayed underneath of it, one TV that says sports, one TV that says Spanish. That's the Spanish TV. You don't ever touch the Amigos TV. You touch their TV, you're going to have an issue. No. That's the one TV you never touch. The Amigos, they got their little pieces of the prison. They don't try to do anything too crazy, but don't mess with their stuff. I was friends with a lot of the amigos. Pisces Serenos were the two only ones that were allowed to walk at the medium. They checked anybody else in if they were part of anything else. They weren't having it. So, yeah, it was real political if you were Spanish there. So, the Latin Kings. There's this fella. He looks kind of like Fat Joe, if I'm being honest. Okay? And he's, about the same build, same bald head, same everything. He looks like Fat Joe. And he would sit in the white TV room. Why doesn't he sit at the Spanish TV? He's Puerto Rican, but he can't speak Spanish. So he can't speak Spanish, so what's he going to do sitting there watching the Spanish TV? So he sat in the white TV room. Now, ultimately, during the day, he'd be in there, and he got in an argument with this fella from Boston. This fella from Boston, oh my God, he got cost like 5 pounds of weed or something. You never seen a man put so much attention into his hair in prison. I just let my stuff go Jumanji. I let it just go 6 months. Why? Who have I got to look good for? Okay? Now some people are like, well, it's not about that. It's about self-pride. No. Whatever. I mean, shoot, you see it now. I let this grow out and then buzz it off. You know what I mean? This guy put probably, he must have gone through a gallon a month of hair gel to get his hair to have this little swoop every month. Stocky, shorter, chubby fella, but walked like he was 250 of straight muscle. He wasn't. He was about 180, a little heavy, had a little muscle. But anyway, the other guy, just going to call him the Fat Joe lookalike, and him were having words. And the guy from Boston, as much as he would like to pretend like he's hard in conversations and stuff, when it came down to it, he wasn't going to say anything. Well, this is presenting an issue. You have a Latin king in the white TV room coming in there and doing stuff, okay, trying to turn the TV. First off, the way they look at it is he's a guest in that TV room. He's lucky he's allowed to sit in that TV room. Now he's coming in and trying to take over. People get real possessive about different stuff in there. Okay, so this is presenting an issue. So this guy, rather than do, and it happened a couple times, and somebody said something about it to it. Now, Sternak walks in on it. Now, there's another guy, too. I have a video called Coolest Prison Fight Ever. It's the guy from that. Wood, the one who threw down his crutches and took off on the guy. Oh, my God, that's a funny dude. He was in there at the time, too. But anyway, Sternak walks in this room, and the one guy from Boston, he's being all timid, but Wood's speaking up. Wood is not that big, maybe about 170, pretty fit, about 5'9", but he'll fight. He'll fight quick, and he don't matter if he wins or loses. I saw him win a good many. I saw him lose a few too, but he'd fight. And you know, he's speaking up because this other guy from Boston is too scared to speak up. But it's an issue. This guy's coming in there trying to run stuff. Sternak walks in there and is like, what's going on? And it goes back and forth. The Fat Joe lookalike said, oh, if somebody's got a problem with it, say something. And Sternak leans in close to him, and he says, I got a problem with it. And he says, he said, oh, well, if that's how it is, you might as well go get your, he got knife, he didn't get the fuh. He tried to say knife. He got the knife. Sternak, pop, cracked him, knocked him flat on his butt. It is in, like I said, the TV room, the camera angle's diagonal, so this is in the blind spot. Knocked him, hit him on his chin, knocked him flat on his butt. He stood up, he swayed in a circle, and Wood said, hit him again. And he said, give me a second. And he sat back down. Sternak popped him. He was out. He was out on his feet. He knew he was out on his feet. So, word about this, gossip. Prison is mean girls for men. It's a bunch of tatted men that gossip like mean girls, okay? The only thing is the repercussions could be with severe violence. But it is a gossip fest. Word travels through the circles. Now, there's an issue here. Sternak's part of DMI. This other guy, Fat Joe lookalike, he is from Latin Kings. Okay, you have two active members that have an issue with each other, that just got into it. There was violence, so there has to be a meeting. And ultimately, Latin King guy was wrong. So not only did he get popped and whooped, he got punished by his people. I believe he had to take some shots to the body for it or something like that. But he got punished by his people, but they squashed it, said it's all good. Which, I mean, looking at the numbers of both, Latin Kings were not a strong presence. They had a handful, and a few of them. The one guy who was up top, there was a store man in the unit up top before I went down to the drug unit, and he was 220 pounds of muscle, about 5'7". And he'd done roids before he went in there, and he showed pictures. He was 250 before that, but so they had a few people that were solid. But Sternak, man, everybody in prison, every idiot's taught that. Oh, I hit hard. Okay, yeah, if you hit a bag, you can hit it hard. Can you hit somebody that's moving around through the air, that's moving back and forth? Can you hit? How are you going to engage when their punch is coming back at you? Everybody thinks they hit hard. Okay, it doesn't matter if you can't hit the person. Sternak had the one-hitter quitter. He had the death touch. He had a hard hit. And that don't necessarily come from as much weight as you lift. Look at Deontay Wilder. I saw something on him. Deontay Wilder can only bench press, I believe it was 325, and he struggled to get that. Well, first off, Sternak's stronger than that, but I guarantee he is the one-hitter quitter. He doesn't hit as hard as Deontay Wilder. But my point is, some people hit hard, but they had the muscle behind it. It does help. But there's something with mechanics, how you do it. And he'd hit first. He'd recognize, okay, that's the biggest thing. People don't recognize they're in a fight. They're too dumb to realize, hey, I'm in a fight. I better hit this guy, okay? A lot of the times it's who hits first that wins, a good part of the time, not always. But he was willing to hit first. And he was accurate, and he could hit really hard. He could hit somebody in a fight. It's not, like all these ignorant people say, oh, I hit hard and all this. Everybody thinks they hit hard. Everybody thinks they... God, the ego dumb stuff that you hear people say, and I just see red, bro. That stuff wouldn't work on me. I just see red. I get so mad and I'll just smash through everybody. Okay, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard in my life. Okay, you're gonna be gassed out in 20 seconds. If you go in at 100, and most people hold their breath when they're swinging. You know what I mean? But anyway, gossip gets around. This is a drug unit where the counselors are involved. We have 3 or 4 people in there that are called DTSs. A DTS, they're drug treatment specialists. They might have had a year-long community college degree, okay? There are 2 women in there, one white who's middle-aged, who had a big old butt, and she loved it when people looked at her, but there was this other little skinny, light-skinned one that was in there, had a big old butt too. Every time, see, you have to set up all the chairs. They set up these speakers and everything. There's a microphone. It's a whole ordeal. The 8:45 or 8:40 to 10:30 program during the program. It's a whole big deal. Now, the little light skin one would be walking back and forth behind the chairs, and you'd see 140 men. And she'd walk by this way. They'd be looking at her walking. She must have been able to taste the fabric. Her pants were so tight. But she was a good-looking young woman, okay? And the other one, the middle-aged one, she didn't like that. So the middle-aged one would be like, oh, come on, guys. But if they looked at her, she didn't mind that. But anyway, there was another guy in there. Big old guy. I don't know what he was. If he's Mexican, Puerto Rican, whatever. He talked like this. And anytime there was like brotherly love. I'm pretty good with voices. This is really accurate now. And anytime somebody do something that was like brotherly love, he'd be like, that's all that. That's all that right there. So he gets up and they start talking, and they heard the rumors, but nobody's talking. The guy, the Latin King, he got questioned. He kept his mouth shut. Okay, Sternak got questioned. He kept his mouth shut. He hit him right on the chin. That's the good thing about knocking somebody out, hitting them on the chin. That's also why I like jiu-jitsu. Choking somebody out does not leave a mark. That saved me from getting my ear taken from RDAP, okay? And I was not an expert. I was so far from an expert. I trained for 2 years, but I trained really dedicated. 4 hours a day, 6 days a week. I had a basic understanding of it. But then there's some people that never trained that just been in it, okay? And that's what Sternak had done. He'd just grown up fighting. He'd been in state prison. He was part of the original DMI bunch. And that experience, having that experience at dozens and dozens of fights, But anyway, they get up front and they say, oh, we ain't going to have this white TV room stuff, blah, blah, blah. We ain't going to have that. We ain't going to have this racial segregation in here. And started talking about all that. Wood raised his hand. They called him. He got the microphone. He said, listen to this. He says, under that TV over there, it has BET spray painted right underneath of it. Black Entertainment Television. He says, this TV over here has Spanish, as in it's the Spanish TV. He said, that one over here has sports. That one over there has like FX or something. He said, I don't see anything. I don't see any country music channel. He says, so if Black Entertainment Channel is on this TV and the Spanish TV is for Spanish people, well, where does that leave the white people? And it shut him up immediately. He had a good point. He actually had a good point. He had a good point to that. Because, I mean, it literally said BET, Black Entertainment Television. And the other one said Spanish, literally Spanish TV. And the one little TV room, 1 out of 7, you know, which, you know, there were actually, I'd say there were probably, out of 140 people, there were probably 40 or 50 white people in there. So, for a third of the people to get 1 out of 7 TVs to watch stuff they like, because people grow up different watching different stuff, you know. I hung out black. My workout crew's all black. My hussy, who I affectionately refer to as a no good, dirty, down hussy, was black. But, you know, I don't watch BET. I don't watch stuff like that. There's different stuff that different people watch. So even though I hung out black, I didn't like watching that. So I watched TV in that TV room. I didn't get in any of this politics and the mess, though. I stayed beyond on that. I did actually have one of the remotes to the TV that faced my cell down the rabbit hole. I do this. Sorry. If y'all knew, I got ADD, OCD, all kinds of other ABCs. You're going to have to deal with it. So, Wellbutrin. I took that for a long time. I had no idea anybody abused it. Apparently, people do. And one of the senior peers there abused Wellbutrin, and in exchange for the remote, so after they lock us down at 9 p.m., I got a cell that I had to buy that faced perfectly in front of the TV. I gave him Wellbutrin. He gave me the remote, okay? So I got to watch my American Horror Story, all this other stuff, because that because of an antidepressant. I mean, that's, you know, it is what it is. But yeah. So that shut him up about that, and he said, well, I want to see people in there. He said, I want to see other people in that TV room. And he would, like, usher people in there to sit. It lasted for all of a week. The whole thing lasted for all of a week. And then it went back to the way it was. Because, I mean, ultimately, as messed up as it is, which it was really weird for me, you know, the whole thing in prison, but it's how it works. People group up. A lot of time people group up by a number of things. I mean, they group up by, okay, if they're in a gang, that's one thing. By the color of their skin, that's another thing. Just how they, different stuff like that. And even though I talk country, I'm not, okay? I'm not. I had a babysitter that watched me when I was little that was from Tennessee, okay? My mom, my sister, they don't talk like me. I'm the only... The place where I grew up, Roanoke, people don't talk like me. Everybody in Roanoke thought that I grew up somewhere else and I must be country. And I'm like, no, this is just how I talk. It's just how it is. And but yeah, I'm not country. Like I like watching shows like FX, like Sons of Anarchy. I like watching Breaking Bad on AMC. Justified, that's one of the best shows ever. That's actually takes place in Southwest Virginia near the Kentucky borderline. And one of my nicknames was Boyd Crowder, which was a bad guy in there. Boyd Crowder, Billy Bob, because I talk like Billy Bob Thornton, karate, MMA, those were 4 nicknames. And the most common one was Taz. That was one that just stuck for the longest time. But yeah, anyway, the whole situation, it ended up dissolving. Like, it got handled. I mean, basically, the Fat Joe lookalike guy, he was out of line. He shouldn't have been in there doing that. There's certain rules and certain stuff that you have to abide by in there. And I mean, you know, he was wrong. He shouldn't have been in there doing it. And he was kind of he could be cool sometimes, but like sometimes he'd get like ignorant and try to act tough. I mean, just straight up. And he could have caused, you know, a gang war. He could have caused a little war between his and the other one. You don't know how. It all depends on, you know, and something else too. They do, in the federal system, they do call it shock collars. I thought that was corny as could be, but that's what they call it in the federal system. I don't know place to place, but they actually did call it shock collars. But whoever the shock collar is, what type of person they are. I mean, some of them, you get an ignorant shock collar, stuff can run real bad. And a lot of times what happens is it'll run bad, there'll be high tension, then they'll get jumped out by one of their people. Usually the most gang violence is people doing it to themselves. Like, so much for brotherly love. It's usually them jumping out one of their own, beating up one of their own. DMI, in my opinion, it's not a racist gang at all. No Aryan or any Swazis, none of that stuff. It was just about five or six white guys there, but they were about it. They made more money than anybody else, and Sternak being the muscle, Steve being the brains, and then there's another guy, Casper, who was the head of it. He's one of the original guys out of the original bunch of them. And it was wild, too, because you talk about place to place. These were some pretty major guys in that organization that were all at one spot. So it was interesting watching them, how they operate, in terms of financial and business sense. I was so impressed with Steve. I mean, that guy was incredible. And just, man, I mean, this guy, you hear about people, it's a wild story. I'll get into that more later. But anyway, if you liked the video, if you've watched it this far, think I earned it, press the like button. If not, 26 minutes and 1 second of your life in which you will never ever get back. And I do apologize if you did not like it, but I surely hope you do. Y'all have a good one.